What's up, everybody? Evan here for Grips.com, continuing with my review of the 2015 World Series of Poker. And the purpose of this video, I know you hear me say it a lot, but it's because it's pretty important, is to reaffirm the importance of continuous education, always learning, never stopping, and why setting the right goals that are also within reason is so important. Because I've tried setting the right goals, but that aren't within reason, and I've seen what happens, and I've seen what happens when I set the right goals that are within reason and what happens. I've seen what happens when I continue to study, and I've seen what happens when I slack on my studies. So I'm also going to talk about a little personal experience of studying this summer that was pretty damn cool. So if you're like me, you've gone through points in your life where you thought you knew a lot about something, only to realize you knew very little about that subject in question. You then went on to gather a bunch of information to learn the topic, to reach a point where, again, you thought that you knew it all, and then the process repeated. This is very normal, and it's kind of like the natural ebb and flow of the education process. You see what there is to learn, you learn it all, and you think you got it, and you realize there's a whole new world to get into after that. It's kind of like intro to psych versus advanced psych versus professor level psych. The point that I'd like to communicate in this video is that the best approach is to always have in your mind that you don't know it all, that you have plenty more to learn, and that you can learn from everyone you meet in your life. That one's very important. The smartest people I know are the ones who feel that they can learn from absolutely everyone they meet in their day-to-day. That being said, it's also important to remind yourself that you do know quite a lot about the things that are important and relevant to your life, and that you have lots to share with others. Don't ever shortchange yourself. Don't ever give yourself less credit than you deserve, because, if you put your efforts towards something, you probably know a good amount about that subject. And this is the beauty of being a student of life. You already know so much, and you always have so much that you can learn. And don't think that you have to learn it all. It's something you get to do if you should be so inclined. You've probably also gone through periods of having overly high aspirations only to feel a sense of disappointment when they didn't come to fruition. This is also normal and is the result of not having clear goals and a clear assessment of your own current top priorities. What's most important in life right now. Obviously, it's nice to aspire to perfect every aspect of our lives and hit every target this week or this month, but it's just not realistic. You got to pick one and work on it. So I want to take this moment to explain why final tabling and winning the main event was actually an unreasonable goal for me to have this summer. Okay, the first reason was I had way too much on my plate. I was working with and building relationships with all the people at the house, getting to know them, trying to spend time with them where I could, and also building relationships with the trainers. Creating new relationships and maintaining relationships, it takes a lot of energy. I found that the years when I felt really A+ about my play were usually the years where I just had a hotel room, I went there, I did my business, I got in and I got out, and I was focused. Another reason was that I was working at the booth at the Rio, and I basically took no days off, so therefore I was completely depleted and from doing a task that wasn't poker related. So I've been working on this kind of other aspect of myself, only to be like, all right, we got to go play the highest stakes tournament in the world. Let's make it happen. Also playing very little live poker prior to the World Series of Poker. I played an okay amount of online and I was getting reps in, but I wasn't practicing live, which is a very different beast than online. So I didn't have, the same comfort level that I had in years where I was really, kind of in the rhythm and in the flow. And if you pick who's going to win at a game of cards, you'd probably want to pick the guy who's been playing, 5 days a week for the last 6 months, rather than the guy who's played, 2 or 3 major tournaments before the World Series of Poker. And I felt that the only way to make up for that was cramming, that when I got to Vegas, I just had to play, which I did for the first few events before the booth got started, which only then led to burnout, trying to do too much in too little time. The last area is that my health and mental game, they are strong, but I'm in the process of developing them, and kind of the health kind of paradigm was just being added when I got there. So that was some new stuff being introduced to the system. And generally when you're going to compete in the playoffs, when you're going to try to win the championship, you already want to have kind of your rhythms, your routines, your habits, and your things you do down so that they're just kind of streamlined and things you don't have to think about before you get there. You can just focus all your energy and your efforts towards playing. So yeah, those were some of the reasons why I felt it was an unreasonable goal. And, you know, you guys know that I take my main event preparation very seriously. So I'd like to show something with you, which is my main event prep plan. You know, it's my year, final table, or get the fuck out. And we have, you know, my fears, my worries. We have kind of my focus, why it's important. Then we have the things that I want to do, the books I want to read, the ways that I want to practice, things I want to do for my physical, and then, you know, some key dates to pay attention to, key relationships, and ways to go about it. And, you know, this is a great plan, for sure. And if I were not running a business on the side, you know, this might just be the recipe for winning the main event. But the problem was I had so many other things that I was working on the side that I wasn't able to do everything on this list. And another thing you see is, you know, kind of the key dates and events. There are a lot of like side events that are there, which were pretty long events, and trying to play those as well, and then still have all my energy for the main event, you know, may have been a bit of a tall order for me. And I think I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, but that's just kind of the way I do things. And it's nice that I have this though, because then I can refine it for next year, or when, you know, I don't have to spend as much work building up, you know, the brand next year. I could have more time to just focus on these things right here. So a little bit about it, you know, the side events, when I reflected on it, you know, they were fun, but the real reason that I put them there was because of other people's agendas, other people's influence of them saying like, oh man, I can't wait to play all these events. Oh, it's so important that you get out there and like crush some prelims because, you know, based on your results and bracelets, that's how people are going to respect you and recognize you and all that. So I thought that, you know, for people to respect me because of what other people were telling me, I needed to get in all these prelim events and do big things. And, you know, to be accepted by my peer group, I thought that I had to do these things. And it turned out about halfway through, I said, you know what, I'm not playing the rest of these because I need to focus on the booth. That's where my energy needs to be. But before I was actually in the place, living it, you know, in the planning phase, yeah, I'm going to throw all those things down there, even if they don't make sense. And yeah, the result of me trying to play all those events, plus trying to get all the trainers and all the relationships going, plus trying to maintain the booth, it just left me stressed out, left me overworked and overextended to the point where, you know, I needed to just sleep a little bit. And, you know, this is just what we learn from planning, and that's why we refine it for the next time around. Now, with that out of the way, talking about, you know, the prep plan, I'm very happy with it. And cashing the main event was deep down what I really wanted to do. You know, consistency is something that I'm big on, so to cash the main event 4 years in a row was something that was really appealing to me, but to be honest, it sounded less sexy than, you know, going out and winning the main event. So because I didn't know if it would be received as well, I had to go with the more hype goal, per se, of saying, you know, I want to go out there and win the main event. But as the main event progressed, I realized, you know, based on my priorities, that the cashing was more important. And the main reason that at the end of it all, that putting final tabling as the main goal was a bad one, was because with the existence of this goal and this need to cash the tournament, they conflict with each other because they require different strategies to go for the win versus going for, you know, the getting in and getting in the money. And I'll speak about that in the main event review video where I'm going to go through some key hands, and I'll shed light on a couple of key hands in situations where having the goal of cashing versus final tabling and risking busting out of the money was the deciding factor that swung my decision. They were definitely close spots, and it was because of, you know, the main goal that determined which action that I took. And I would like to say that final tabling the main event is not a bad goal. It's still always going to be one of the goals, but it just wasn't the right goal for right now for this year. And I'm happy to have hit the goal that I was, you know, more honest about, which is cashing the tournament. So let's talk a little bit about what happened. You know, the past couple of years, now that we've, you know, cleared the air and you guys kind of know where I'm at, where I'm coming from. The past couple of years, I spent a lot more time in the, you know, the I don't know zone than I did in the I know it all zone. It might have been reflected in my videos. It reflected in my activities of feverishly studying as much as I could to get ready for the WSOP main event. Despite the fact I'd already cashed the main 3 years in a row, I feel very comfortable playing that tournament in particular, and I feel it's my strongest event. I still felt that I wasn't ready. And perhaps that's my own, kind of internal monologue of never thinking I'm good enough, never thinking I'm worthy to compete with the big boys, or, perhaps it's rooted in insecurities rather than reason. Either way, in my behavior, it led to me taking in as much info as I could and the highest quality info I could from people who, basically did that day in, day out. That's what their life is about. And being in the fortunate position of knowing the people I do, both players and teachers, I have access to some pretty high quality content. The beauty, though, lies in the fact that for a fair price, you can have access to all this information too. And as long as you're sticking with getting good content that is relevant to what you are hoping to improve on right now, you'll get your money's worth because you'll take in every last drop of juice that book or webinar or live stream or video or live workshop has to offer. And I will always tell you guys what I think that you should study if you tell me the specific thing that it is you want to work on. One of the problems is a lot of people are too general. They just say, I want to get better. And I say, well, better at what specifically? You got to take the time to identify that, and then it's very easy for a good coach to recommend you what you need to do for the next step. This is how you maximize your EV when it comes to education. This year in my research for setting up shop at the World Series of Poker, I took a note of a group called Zen Poker Mentoring, a company co-founded by Brian Rast, you guys probably know, they run live hand labs and seminars to help people improve their poker game. Now, although unfortunately I wasn't in town when Brian Rast ran his session since I was on a vacation, this was definitely something that I wanted to experience. I know that Greggy had run one of these events before as part of World Series of Poker Academy, and he told me that it was a pretty good time. So clearly, a major focus of my summer was FT in the main event. That was the goal that was kind of in the back of my mind as opposed to the one that was on the front. But it was all about the main event. It's always about the main event for me. And what better way to do that than to learn from someone that already did that and went on to win, Mr. Joe Cada. So, when everyone else took the 4th of July to go party, I woke up at 7:30 in the morning so that I could attend a hand lab with former world champ and my good buddy Ace from Zen Poker Mentoring, who I was quite thankful to meet this summer. Really, really good guy. So I didn't really know what to expect. I just kind of, showed up. It was a $500 session for, I think it was like 8 hours, but I wasn't able to do the whole session because I wanted to play some satties that day, apply what I learned from Bernard Lee. And the session started out with a 2-hour back and forth with poker psychologist, business coach, and university professor, Dr. Alan Shoemaker. And this part was a lot of fun. So we sat down and he said, I'm not going to do a lecture. I'm not just going to tell you guys, what I think, because people don't like learning that way. So instead, let's hear what you guys think your problems are, and then we'll try to help each other out. So, people would put up their hands and say what they thought their problem was, and then he'd say, does anyone have an answer for this? And I felt pretty good about it because having done so many Project Get Me Stackins, I was just like, yeah, I think this is your issue, and I think that, and this, and that. And I got a lot of people being like, damn, thanks, man. That really helped. That really made a difference. And it's nice to get to do that in real life. And it made me feel really warm inside that at the end of the session, when it was time for Joe Cada to take the stage and Alan was going to leave, that he called me over and asked, if I worked for Zen or if I was planted in the audience or what the deal was. And I just kind of told him about grips and my idea and my vision and my mission. And he said it sounded fantastic. And he said that, I was in a good position and I was making a smart move by trying to do more than just play poker. And that was something that I was very thankful for, to get that feedback from someone who, he's been in the business for a long time and worked with some really talented people along the way. To hear that from someone of that caliber to say, you're doing the right things and you're doing a great job, that really helps to, put more fire in the tank. So then Cada hopped in the box and I experienced my first hand lab. And what a hand lab is the player is in the box as the dealer and they deal everyone, their hands. and then the players play their hand, but they keep their cards when they fold, and then at the end of the hand, they turn the hands face up, and then the pro says, okay, you know, I like what you did with this because of that, not so much because of that, this is what I would have done here and there, and I actually got a lot out of it. I think that I got a lot more out of it than most of the people there because I actually understood what Joe was talking about. Some of these players who paid $500 had honestly played poker once or twice before, so they probably missed out on a lot of what Joe was saying, but for me it was fantastic. And to hear how he would play some really significant hands, because he would always say, you know, like, this is how I play it, but, you know, you guys are playing the main event this weekend, so if it were the main event, I would do this. And he actually took a lot less risk and a lot less variance than I thought a player like him would take. So that was really helpful because I did carry that through with me to the main event. Yeah. So this time around, you know, I was really glad to make the time to attend this event. And because I prioritized it and was like, you know, I'm going to wake up at 7:30 to go do this, I made sure that I got the most out of the session and I didn't leave anything on the table. And it was really helpful and really worth it and had a big impact on me and the way I approached the next few days. And I had a ton more confidence from having done this, which is one of the biggest benefits of going out and getting a little bit of education, is it builds your confidence and your trust in yourself that you know what you're doing and that you're qualified to be doing what it is you were trying to do. So like I said, after the session, I had a quick chat with Dr. Schoonmaker, who opened my eyes to a lot of things and who is someone I look forward to having as a coach and a teacher moving forward. Because, you know, the old guys who have been around the block, seen it all firsthand, and seen the results of what various behaviors are in the long run, are the people I want to be learning from. This is a guy who's lived in Las Vegas. You know, he used to work with Barry Greenstein, Tommy Angelo, a lot of, you know, the great minds in poker. And he's also seen what happened to all the pros who devoted their lives exclusively to poker, living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and, you know, where they ended up at 40, 50, 60, and thereon. And that's something that, you know, you can't learn from a book. You can't learn from watching a movie. You really need to be there on the front lines. And he's someone who has been there. So I can't say enough how excited I am to learn from his firsthand experience, from being around that environment, and an environment that, you know, I think would be good for my poker game, but just isn't the place where I would want to be living right now. Yeah, so I then took what I learned and went off to play a couple of satellites to the main event because there is so much value in the main event satellites. The 1K satellite was the first one I played. It was short and sweet. I tripled my stack with some good plays, taking it from, I think it was like 6K starting stack to 18K. And then I had a pretty ridiculous hand where I think I might have had 60 big blinds at this point. I just won a big pot. I raised kings on the button, small blind shoved, somewhere between 15 and 20 bigs. So I'm like, great, I'm going to call him. Big blind, who was the only guy on the table who had me covered. He'd been playing loose and running pretty well. Insta went all in, and I'm like, great. No one instantly goes all in with aces. I got kings. Like, how much? At first I was going to calculate, you know, what my stack was and whether I had enough that I could cash. Because, you know, in a satellite, that's what's important. But I was like, no, we still got work to do. We have kings. Like, this guy never has aces. Let's go. Cool. So I just snap her in there. And the big blind's like, wow, so sick. And rolls over aces. And I'm like, huh, well, it's not what I would have said if I was the guy with aces. But yeah, I guess it's pretty sick. Aces for the big stack, eights for the small stack, kings for myself. Board ran out clean, and I was eliminated from that one. So I then proceeded to register for the $500 tournament that was maybe an hour in after having some lunch. And that one also was a lot of fun. I had to play really slowly paced in that one and really navigate my stack. I didn't get too many cards in the beginning, so I really, you know, bobbed and weaved my way. And after spinning my 4K stack up to around 18K, we got down to like 60 or 70 players from the initial 400, so about 20 seats were up for grabs. I then, I ran into a spot where middle position shoved, I had 18K, middle position shoved 22K, and I think it was 816, or maybe it was 6, no, it was 816 for sure. This lady who had about 7K ISO'd, well, you know, called off with her short stack, which concerned me a little bit. And I looked down and I had 10s in the big blind. I'm like, I would definitely call the first guys all in. No problem. But for her to call off, she should have a pretty strong hand. So then I calculated the side pot to see that so long as I beat the bigger stack in the pot, I would still have, a similar chip stack. Plus, if I scoop the whole thing, obviously that's the best. And I saw the side pot was pretty significant, so even if, I called and beat him but lost to her, I'd still be in a similar chip position. I decided it was worth taking the spot. So I called, the big stack had pocket eights, and the short stack had ace-4 offsuit, which didn't make sense, but then I remembered I'm playing a $500 satellite to the main event, where a lot of things are going to not make sense. And board ran out with a bunch of clubs, which I didn't have, and then 8 on the river, which sent me packing to the rail. Now, in the first situation, if I somehow get there with the kings, I'm pretty much guaranteed a seat. So I really like my spot in that tournament. The second one, I wasn't guaranteed a seat, but that would have given me about a 12x starting stack, where 20x is kind of average for in the money. But with only 6 tables remaining and me feeling pretty good about my short stack ninja tactics, I think I would have had a pretty decent chance, maybe a 50-50 or a 60-40 of getting a seat with that stack. Maybe even a 70-30 actually with that. Probably 60-40, 70-30, I think. So I felt really good about playing those satellites, and I felt I got my money's worth despite the fact that I didn't walk away with the ticket. And it was a good confidence booster to get those in before playing the main event and just being like, yeah, I got some good game. I got some good confidence. And if these people are going to be winning seats in the main and they're going to be part of the field, I feel very good about my $10,000 investment, a couple days from now. So yeah, I felt great that session because I got to make a few slight adjustments to my play that day from what I learned with Joe, and also from just, talking with everyone, because, it's a two-way communication, these hand labs, so you get to offer your insight too, and people can be like, oh, that makes sense, or oh, I disagree with you because of that, and really grow a lot. And most importantly, I felt that I'd improved as a person, and development and growth, they just feel really good. Just feel really good in the human condition. So it was pretty awesome, this whole experience of like setting this goal and then seeing all the things that happened as a result of me setting that goal. Because if I didn't care about winning the main event, I wouldn't attend a hand lab with Joe Cada from competing entity. But because that was my goal, my folks were like, okay, anything I can do to win the main event? Oh, this might help me win the main event. Okay, I'm going to go do that. And although final tabling the main event may have been an unrealistic goal for now, it was an extremely useful one to have because it drove me to take those action steps that made it that much more possible in the future. I told you guys in a previous video about the work I did with Matt Jarvis and getting him to develop a program for exactly what to do before game day, on game day, and after game day. The elite people, and that was just one example. The elite people I've gotten to work with this year as a result of that goal, and the whole Team Grips project has been unbelievable. People like Matt Jarvis, Elliot Rowe, Alex Fitzgerald, Greg Merson, Tony Gregg, and now you can add Joe Cada to that list. It's just unbelievable. If I looked back 3-4 years ago, there's no way I would have thought that I would be getting to learn from these great minds and working very closely with them. Just like not very far down the road from when I initially set the goal. The strategy content I've taken in over the last 9 months has been on a much higher level and I've taken it much more seriously than before as well. I've really made sure that I got the results for the time I put in because I had a specific target, and I had identified what areas and skills I needed to develop to make hitting that target possible. So I was only spending my time, researching and learning things that were going to help me. And for that reason, I was so much more excited about everything I was doing and so much more involved about everything I was doing because there was nothing where I was like, oh, this is a waste of time. Why am I bothering with this? Also, keep in mind that my year has always been focused around the main event since going back to like 2012. In fact, probably going back even further to like 2011. When I first met Greg Merson, and in 2012 was when I first discovered, The Secret. And I've managed to cash the tournament every year since I discovered The Secret and made my main focus, I want to win the main event. Even if it's an unrealistic, tough goal that involves a lot of luck, if you look at how my life has changed for the positive because of having that goal and that target, can't say it was a bad decision at all. So, yeah, clearly my high aspirations are doing something right. If I've been getting the results I've been getting, 4 cashes in the main event 4 years straight, and a couple of first place finishes in some side events outside the World Series of Poker as well, which are very important because, if I do get to that final table, I want to be prepared to, close it out and win that thing. Yeah, for me, all that's lacking is just a little bit of clarity. What's more important? Getting that record for most consecutive cashes in the biggest and richest poker tournament in the world, because that's a pretty significant accomplishment, or going all out to reach the final table and risking early elimination. There's more glory in going for, the big score, but there also isn't the same, security and kind of guarantee that comes from playing, a more low variance approach. So both styles work, and both styles can get you results. The question is, which result do you want? Because that's the style you should implement in a tournament that has a structure which allows so many different styles to, succeed. And at this point between those two, I can't say I'm sure, because getting the record, getting a record for most cashes in a row, that seems pretty cool to me. And it seems like much easier and within reach than going for the win. But, I could just say forget about it and go for the win. I haven't decided yet. But, I've got plenty of time to figure it out. And the good news is that the preparation for both is pretty much the same. It's only the execution and the game plan on game day that changes. So I'm going to engage in the same behaviors going into it in all my off time. So that's not really going to change. It's just, when it's time to play the tournament, I'll figure it out. So just a little bit about what I learned to close this video out. We're probably going on a good amount of time now. First thing I learned is that I know a lot more than I'd like to give myself credit for, but because of the people that I compare myself to, I feel like I don't know much at all. And this applies in the field of poker, since I just compare myself to my buddies who are the top elite players, and in the field of psychology, where I also just compare myself to my teachers and the people I learn from, and don't look at everyone else that's out there and see where I would compare to them. Second thing I learned is that there are so many learning opportunities out there. The key is to be open to saying yes, and then giving it your full attention while you're there. Because if you're just sitting there and you're not really present, you're doing something else, you might as well not even be there. It's a waste of your time and your money. But when you are in there, when you are all in and really giving it your all, you're going to get a lot of value. And it's so much easier to grow when you get away from your normal routine. Just when you get away from your normal routine and you try new things to find out which kind of learning method is going to work best for you. And the third thing I learned is that whether someone knows more than you about something or less about something, you can still learn from them. If they know more, ask them a question and then sit back and wait for the response, like Project Get Me Stacking. If they know less, then let them ask you a question, do your best to give them a response, and then try to understand why is that a legitimate question, or why this other person would be curious to know that. Because it's all about perspective and being able to see things from all the different perspectives, because your perspective is probably not the same as your parents' perspective, as your best friend's perspective, as your girlfriend's perspective, as this player's perspective, or your hero's perspective, or this fan's perspective, or whatever. But the more perspectives you can understand things from, and the more perspectives you can see things from, the greater you can understand the concept and what it really means to all the different people. Okay? And the best part about that exercise is it puts you in their shoes, and that is the strongest place to be able to put yourself when playing poker, in your opponent's shoes. So this exercise is also one that will pay off on the fence. Okay, so now that we've got kind of the big review, the big life lessons that I picked up this summer at the World Series of Poker, we're going to get on to the meats, the really good stuff that you guys have been waiting to hear, the hand histories. So the next part of the series, I'll talk about how all my preparation and training paid off in the main event, and also the big keys that I learned from playing in the preliminary events and the observing other pros and their approaches to the festival that is the World Series of Poker. I did end up playing, I think it was 6 preliminary events. I hopped in a daily deep stack too to see what that was all about, plus the 2 satellites. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those, what was fun, what wasn't, what I learned, how to accommodate. You know, it's just tips and tricks from the experiences of being out there on the felts, in the trenches, really doing battle. So thank you for watching. This has been Evan for Grips.com saying peace out, and until next time, happy stacking.